sons. They're significantly larger than me. They'd be linemen. So I have no desire to have them play offensive, defensive line and get beat up for 4 years. They had uncles that did that were very good at it. That's, yeah. So. It's baseball. I should have stayed up with a little bit more, but I have the same problem John has. I can't watch baseball with my kids there. It's much easier to coach. Yeah. Nope. I figured after the first year, I'll just be out there. I'll be screaming.
All right, I have 6 o'clock. Thank you all for coming out tonight. As always, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'll stand with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Carrie, if you'll read the roll call tonight.
Mr. Steinberg? Mrs. Rorick?
Here.
Mr. White?
Here.
Mr. Whittington? Here. Mayor Orange?
Here. And we do have a quorum tonight. We'll get started with public comments. So if you're here with something that's not on our agenda tonight, you need to approach the council.
Daryl Gensel, 22083 604th Avenue. I kind of understand that this, the racetrack or whatever we talk is kind of resurfacing with a few new council members. I'd just like to a few things they might not be aware of.
This is on our agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is on the agenda. Should I hold back a little? Or?
Yep.
Oh.
We are going to be allowed to talk during that time because I got comments on the whole thing too.
We're not in a public comment period yet.
Oh, I thought this was you just said we're comment.
No, this is open public comments. If you have something to approach the council on that's not on our agenda tonight.
Okay, so we'll have to refrain for now?
Yeah, I'm not looking for public comment tonight on the motorsports park.
Okay.
Anything else?
So we're not going to be allowed to talk on that at
No, this is not a public hearing on the Motorsports Park.
Isn't it on the agenda?
It's on the agenda, yes.
When will we be allowed to speak on it?
At the public hearing,
When's that?
that comes up later, months from now. You know the process.
Right, I think there's stuff that's not, you know, we just like to bring it to your attention.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have anything that's not on our agenda tonight? All right, we'll move on. Council, you have the agenda in front of you. Is there anything we'd like to have changed or modified in tonight's agenda? I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda tonight.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. In your packet on page 3 begins the minutes from our February 7th and February 16th meetings. Anybody have anything they would like to have corrected in those minutes?
Mayor, I noticed on page 14, it'd be page 3 of the February 16th meeting. It says it was Councilmember Steinberg moved and seconded by Steinberg. So if we can just correct that.
Under the adjournment?
Yeah.
Carrie, you'll look back to see who made that? All right, anything else? Then I'll look for a motion to approve the amended minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. The consent agenda begins on page 15 of your packet tonight. Does anybody see anything they would like to have pulled for further discussion in those items? I'll just note that there is one appointment, Tony Dickmeyer, to the EDA board. If not, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda tonight.
I'll motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. Under presentations, as we move on here, we have Angela DiMartini with us tonight to talk about Bella's House of Doodles and the updated business plan that's included in your packet. Jennifer, I'll let you give a little background here as we move in.
Okay. As the mayor mentioned, included in the city council packet is the updated business plan from Angela DiMartini with Bella's House of Doodles. Just to give a little background, Mrs. DiMartini attended the January 19th city council meeting so that the city council could review the conditional use permit for 107 598th Avenue and determine whether alleged violations warranted its revocation and or whether an extension of the expired agreement to temporarily operate the business out of the secondary building was appropriate to continue so long as certain conditions were met. And one of the items required was an updated business plan to accurately reflect the use of each building, as well as give a clearer picture of the overall scope of the business. Also attached in the packet for reference purposes, there's a copy of the January 19th City Council meeting minutes, a copy of the letter that was sent on January 5th to Mrs. DiMartini, and a copy of the letter sent to Mrs. DiMartini on January 26th. I just want to note that included in the updated business plan is a reference to add a loft or a second floor in the tall building. After talking with the city's building inspector, he advises that plans are needed with a code analysis from an architect with the changes that are being proposed. And his recommendation is that the analysis should address all the buildings on the property. And his rationale is that the tall building is currently classified as a storage building under state building code, and if the use of occupancy changes, it would be classified differently. And there may be additional requirements that go along with that. So, and then just to give you a brief update on the items received so far. I did receive a zoning application for a fence, and that has recently been withdrawn. And let's see, we received a site plan for the parking lot, and I think that is gonna depend on the actual use of the buildings and how many parking stalls should be required. We've received an application for a dog run. I've reviewed lot coverage requirements. We shouldn't have any issues with that. And then the application for the ancillary building that was placed on the site without a building permit. I'm not able to process that at this time until I get clarification from the building inspector as to whether there needs to be separation between the tall building and the ancillary building. And the explanation given to me from the building inspector is it just depends on the use of the buildings and what's required per code. So I have to wait on that. And then I guess if you want to allow Angela to talk and give you kind of an overview of the updated business plan, what's all included, and then I think we should just review next steps in the upcoming hearing for a potential amended conditional use permit. So that's all I have. I just wanted to make sure everybody has all the background so you know how we got to this point and can refer back to the materials for additional information.
Jennifer, did you mention that a fence permit was received but withdrawn?
Yep, a fence permit was received, but just due to issues with if it's directly on the property line, you have to have a notarized agreement, so that requires some work with the different property owners, and then also, complications with utility easement and not wanting to place something and then having to move it. So, yep.
Okay. Well, does the council have any questions moving in? Then I think we would open the floor, and if you've got some information to present to us tonight.
Sure. First, I want to address this second floor issue. That's in the business plan as future within 3 to 5 years. I believe that it's marked in there. We're not have no intentions at this time. The last time I came before you guys, you said you wanted to know if we had any ideas that what we might want to do down the road up to 5 years. As far as the second floor, it would be engineered steel second floor, which means it would be separate from the building. It would have steel poles, just like you see in a warehouse. So, but that's if we ever do it 3 to 5 years down the road. I'm also supposed to give you an update today on how far we are. Electrical's been inspected as of today, done. The HVAC is 98% done, waiting for the gas line to be done by the plumber. Plumber comes in on Friday. At the current moment, all the interior walls are all completed. The floors are being epoxied today. Moving right along.
Better than our April
Well, there again,
thoughts?
I waited on the state.
Fingers
for approval.
crossed? Good. Question for you, though, in regard to the loft and the future use. So one of the things that the building code looks for is that what was originally called a garage building, but that is intended to be used for dog housing. I think that's the rub on that, is that it has a completely different use from what it was analyzed at as the building code. And so you may not have adequate heating and cooling in that building for dogs to be in the building.
We built the structure as a commercial building, and we built it as a commercial HVAC and so forth. And
Right, but there's differences in the use of every commercial building. So there's 10 commercial occupancy types.
Actually, there's 11. But it was, when we built it in that fashion. There's air-to-airs, there's special air-to-air in there for filtration in case we ever ran a dump truck in there for the fumes or welding or so forth in there. There is HVAC system, there's two. There's actually an infrared system, and there's a forced air with, the central air unit is not installed at this time, but it's ready for it to be installed. Being that it was done in the winter time that we felt we didn't need.
Right, I'm just saying that that's what the building inspector is looking for,
Correct.
because it has to be inspected for the use that you want to use it for.
He's welcome to come anytime.
Well, you have to provide those documents.
Okay, I will get with him, Mr. Murphy, and I'll make
Right.
the appointment.
So essentially, that could be a no issue if he comes out and says, yep, you're all set.
Right,
in 1
right.
to 3 years, or whenever you decide to do it.
Yep,
It'd
and,
be fine.
I just was
Yeah.
trying to cover all bases, projecting ahead, because last year we get very variable and keep coming back asking for changes and more and this and that, so again, we might not do that, but
no, and that's all good, it's just, let's say 3 years from now, it changes, but the HVAC system isn't set up for
I'm sorry, I
that.
misunderstood
Yeah.
you. I thought for right now, for her having the dogs in it, as taking it from using it as a storage to her having kennels inside.
Well, that is also a trigger right there, so storage garage is S1, storage occupancy. To have the dogs in there, I think we're up to a B occupancy. So it's a different animal, and it has to be analyzed differently.
I will get with Mr. Murphy and make sure everything's.
And it may be a moot point, as Beth said, it may be already adequate for that, but it has to be analyzed for it. Did everyone have a chance then to look at the business plan as presented? Have any questions moving forward? I know one of the big concerns that we had was number of dogs, and so I noticed that you had a number of dogs that were in your ownership. Will those dogs be on site?
yeah, depending on litters, if you have litters, they would always be there. My dogs are at my house. When they have a litter of puppies, they would come there, but then they leave. So they don't live there. The daycare and boarding, that varies. I need to break down the numbers on daycare, the ratio for staff per dogs. We do want to stay at a smaller scale for daycare, specializing in that intimate, smaller setting.
Because I know we're not counting puppies in our dog count, so,
Correct. And the reason being that was is because I can't give you a count because it varies.
right.
And they don't stay there, they're only there for a short amount of time and then they go to the next family.
Well, I think this was one of the legal
Right.
questions that came up is,
We don't count puppies, and we can't for the first period of time. The question I had is, when you talk about 40 dogs out there for maximum occupancy, it wasn't clear to me in your business plan if you're talking, including your own dogs in that 40, or just 40 they're gonna be boarded.
I think my answer to the question is, if we're having both of the buildings, the mom dogs, the puppies would be in that smaller building, they won't be with the boarding dogs.
What's the maximum number of dogs that are gonna be in the facility at any
She's
given time?
asking for up to 45, regardless if there are personal dogs or customers.
In the
No more
building?
than 45.
Okay. Well, where does 45 come from? Because I saw 25 and I saw 40, I didn't see the number 45.
I think the daycare dogs, I think that we have three sections of daycare dogs that come in, small, medium, and large, and we have 5 in one play area, and we had, we get the 5 or 6 in the next one. I was counting those two.
Right, but you can see up there on the boarding portion, you're indicating there's 40. My question is, does that 40 include your own dogs?
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
So what is where she's getting, yeah, it's. Correct, because that's how each kennel can hold technically up to 2 dogs. So what they're trying to get at is by the kennels, how many kennels there are according to the dogs. So with that, how many kennels we have, that's the max number, including our dogs.
I'm sorry,
Is that,
we're asking for the max for both buildings on the property, 45 dogs. No more than that. They can't accept any more dogs if they're at their max at 45.
Is that what you're asking?
Well, I was just trying to clarify the information that you had there. The 45, like I said, isn't something I saw in your business plan. I saw 40. I was just trying to determine whether or not the 40 was 40 plus 25. The max, what you're telling me is that the 45 would be the maximum because that's what you have for the kennels. And certainly we can put that in a conditional use permit limiting your kennels so you can't expand the number of kennels. But that's kind of where I think when we're talking to the community as a whole, there are going to be questions as to how many adult dogs are going to be at the premises at that time. And when you're talking about 45 with the kennels, you know, I have some concerns regarding the number of puppies being there and how they're going to be facilitated, though we have a little bit less control over that particular issue. So that's the only thing I was trying to verify is with the two numbers that I saw there, I saw the 25, I saw the 40, you know, and I was just trying to, you know, figure out if that what you were saying 65 or you were just saying total of 40. And what the answer came back was, is the answer is 45, which is fine, but, okay.
So what we have right here, this should be modified to 45, that 40 dogs right there?
I don't think that needs to be modified to 45. The 40 would be okay because that's talking about just the number of dogs that they're boarding. It's not including their own dogs. The 45 would include their own dogs, from what I understand, being out there at any given time.
And so again, to be clear, your business plan, as you're saying, this is looking for maximum, you know, build out, maybe a couple years down the line. You're anticipating ramping up to this point? Or,
I think she's asking right now for up to 45. If she ever expands by putting the second floor in, then we'd approach to ask for the building permit for the second floor. And then ask to modify if we can have more.
But at that point, you're asking to modify the conditional use permit. That may not be possible, nor may the
Right.
city be looking at that. That was the idea with the business plan, to get an idea where we're going to be for 3 years from now, so we could put together a conditional use plan that doesn't have to be modified in 3 years.
Well, what we're asking for is, it's up to 45 dogs. I mean,
Okay.
we're not gonna expand it, because for one, we don't have the area to go there. We figured at that amount of dogs, for what we have set right now, that's what we can handle. We're not gonna come back in 3 more years to ask for more dogs. That's a lot of dogs, and that was at that property.
The length of line for second
The
floor.
second floor would be more for like activity area, more play area for storage. It would be actually for more kennels and more dogs.
I guess I misspoke.
Well, we just need clarification before we have the public hearing and before you do the, you know, conditional use permit. But that's the idea, I think, that the council had, and certainly the idea that I had, is that we're trying to put together a conditional use permit that you can live with, that the city can live with, that goes from 5 years from now, and you're not coming back 3 years from now saying we need to have this modified, otherwise our business is gonna suffer.
Well, and I agree with that, I mean, I think we should have that, but I think also, I think a lot about this, and you guys came back to me and said, you know, don't keep coming back asking for more, don't keep asking for changes. But as a business, don't you want to grow and don't you want changes? I mean, I would think that you guys would be like, oh my gosh, you guys are growing, wow, you guys want to do this, that's great. Instead of kind of like shaming me for coming back for more.
You're right, except for the fact you're asking for a conditional use permit. Generally speaking, conditional use permits are granted once. The property never comes back and asks for any kind of modification on a conditional use permit. So you have a use that's not normal for that area. So I mean, if you were doing something that was industrial in the industrial park, so, you know, and then you were expanding the business that was something that was permitted, that would be fine. We would expect that to happen and go forward, but the issue here is that conditional use permit. And generally speaking, those aren't modified. Yeah, I'm not saying never. I mean, I know North Mankato has on its agenda tonight where if somebody's getting a conditional use permit, it has to be modified, but that's only because the ownership changed. It was with that property, but there's no other changes, and that's been in place for 40 years.
Well, good thing I'm thinking you had been asking questions, right?
But it's, yeah, and that's why the question regarding the number of dogs becomes important for the conditional use permit. Is if you're saying it's 45 now, but we think it's going to be 60 at some point, then we need to consider the 60. And from your perspective, you know, you want to have something in place that the neighbors aren't necessarily coming back and arguing, you know, 5 years from now saying, no, we want more restrictions. Because if you're asking for changes, it can be both ways.
and to kind of follow up with that line of of thinking too. So we currently have a conditional use permit that's in place. What are the penalties for breaking the conditional use permit? What does that entail?
Basically, if we decided that they were in violation of the conditional use permit and not using it in that particular fashion, it would void the conditional use permit and it would be zoning violations. You know, whether or not that would be criminal actions or an abatement action, that we're saying that the business can no longer operate in that particular fashion. And most likely would be litigation, you know, in that situation. You know, we don't see that a lot. There's usually a lot of work trying to get everything kind of put together. And obviously, I think the city has looked at that, but if that were to be the case where they're completely just in violation of the conditional use permit, you're looking at just revoking the conditional use permit and, you know, saying it's not permitted under the zoning ordinance.
So I think that's why we're asking so many questions. We need to get this, you know, right. Because again, it isn't allowed in this zoning district, but for these conditions. And so that's the permit that we have currently. So the council needs to be crystal clear on what we're allowing. And then we all have to agree that we're gonna abide by those guidelines. So we're not trying to shame you. We're trying to make sure that this is crystal clear so that we don't have issues in the future.
I mean, quite frankly, you have a very interesting type of business. It just falls in between a couple of different categories. So, I mean, if this was sheep, we have regulations that we can go in there. If it was a veterinary service, we can look at that, but you're in between there someplace.
Angela, I can tell you that I appreciate you going through this, because I know I was one of them that asked for more of, you know, dream it out, throw it out there, let's know now, because I don't want you to be out of compliance, where now we're coming back saying, hey, you gotta fix this. The building is quite tall, so to add a loft in there, I would see it as storing toys that aren't used and things like that. That makes sense. To add more dogs, that's a lot of dogs on that property. I'm still trying to figure out how you're getting that many dogs on the property with running them and stuff. I will when it's not muddy. I have been excited on how much progress I've seen. You know, there's always a contractor there when I come home. So I'm excited for you guys in the sense that you're getting close. I'm excited for spring to come out where you can get concrete out there instead of mud. And I appreciate you going through this. I think that was my biggest piece too, is making sure we're all on the same page and we don't keep changing. But I don't want to me personally, I don't want to set businesses up to fail. Like, let's dream big, but let's dream within code. Let's make sure we're set within it, and then have it be where, yes, you can grow into it, but not past it, especially in a CUP agreement. So I, for one, appreciate this, but just knowing your limits based on the lot size you have in the building and things like that, and then what the city, we're not in country, we're in the city, on what that all allows and stuff too.
No, I think the conditional use permit will protect you as well, right, as we move forward for questions that come from potential neighbors and things like that. So getting that right will protect you as well.
So it looks to me like there's two next steps. One would be to get with Dan Murphy, make sure that all of your buildings are analyzed or reviewed, you know, for building code compliance with those future uses kind of looked at. And that way we can move forward. Then I think our next step as a council would be to schedule the public hearing on revising or modifying that conditional use permit. And so then we'd put all that kind of into documentation, and then you go forward. So what would we have to do then to schedule that hearing, or?
At this point, I think what you probably want to do is add a step 1A, that at the next meeting, you get all the information, make sure they're compliant with the building code, give staff some time to take a look at recommendations on a proposed conditional use permit. And then at that first meeting in April, my suggestion is then you would set the public hearing. And and then we can have that put in place. But that would give the council, would give the DeMartinis, and then obviously the public an idea of at least what the suggestions are and what we're looking at modifying. Yeah, probably in May.
And so our next meeting is April 4th.
That would be right. I mean, I know that there was a deadline that was about April 1st on a number of the stuff regarding the properties, and that would just let you give an update on that. Then you can set the public hearing after.
Yeah, and it looks like you're on your way to completion,
Yeah, ask for April 15th.
right?
So I have a question, I'm maybe Rich, I told him this answer, but if we get everything done in the next 2 weeks, can we move into the new building if we have occupancy? Or do I have to wait because, do I have to wait? Because that was,
I don't think so. Chris, you'd have to tell me if that's correct, if the,
It's like a teaser for you.
what we'll call it, the auxiliary building, because that isn't included in our current CUP.
It's not included in the current CUP, so assuming the council wanted to use good faith in working with you on that, there have to be a real strong understanding that it could be revoked until we get that CUP put in place. So I'm a little hesitant to tell you that you would have to do that, but the council's kind of gotten out of this, what we would normally do for a CUP in this manner anyways. And I think that they want to work with you, but, so if that got put in place and you want to put something in front of the council at the next meeting, we could certainly consider it.
okay.
But if you're saying there's something happening in the middle of this month before the next meeting, I don't think that would be likely to happen.
Okay, well, just so I understand, because I was supposed to already be in that building, right? So that was kind of already approved to be in that building. So now that it's getting completed, could I do both of them?
Because they took they gave what they approved you on that building, on the other building.
Oh, and
So that building's done, so now they have to approve it to go back.
okay. I just would like to get an office in that building because I can't change the phones, the dogs are barking, we got daycare dogs, and it's kind of crazy there.
So they would essentially be doing it at their own risk.
Right. Well,
Are they
I
in trouble?
don't want to say at their own risk, because I want the city to be a part of it, but it would be, if the council's okay with it, staff could give a conditional ability to use it, and that has some advantage of being able to see what that actually looks like before we have the conditional use permit. The problem with that ends up being is that if we decide that that's not something we want to go forward with, they've already relied on that to some extent, and that makes it much more difficult to run a business. So that's the part that I would be hesitant about, but if everything's done ahead of time, Jennifer's in a good position to, get a hold of you, and if you needed to have a special meeting for that particular issue, you probably could. But I, just to have a blanket saying that, once this is done, we're gonna go ahead and do that, I think the council needs to look at something a little bit further.
So what was it, because I'm trying to wrap my brain around this, so if once the building is done, there's still a chance you might say, well, you can't use that building? I mean, that's.
It's overall gonna be how many dogs and stuff are gonna be allowed in for the conditional use permit, and it's not a matter of saying that you can't use that building for some purposes, what purpose and how many dogs are gonna be total.
So at the next meeting, we're deciding whether we can use that for how many dogs we can use.
The next meeting, the council will have all the information showing that the building permits and where the project is gonna look like. And then hopefully at that time, we'll have some suggestions on the conditional use permit. And then before we can issue the conditional use permit, there will have to be a public hearing to give some public input before the council makes their final decision.
So what's the time frame on that? It's like 2 months?
I think we're looking at about 2 months, yeah.
I thought there was a big urgency to get to that building right away. Again, kind of like already planning on moving in 2 weeks. And I was hoping to move in.
And I can somewhat see your confusion in the sense that we have been pushing her and saying, hey, get the building done, when you coming in, when's it done? And then all of a sudden, and I can kind of relate, like as a business owner, wait, it's done, but you can't move in yet, because we gotta, so I can see both sides of it.
My conditional use is for the property, correct?
The conditional use runs
Correct,
with
the
the property.
dogs are in the one building, right?
Right.
Why can't she have her office in the other building with no animals until you guys make the ruling if we can use that for the for that or not. All she's using it as an office versus,
I don't see that as actually being a problem. That wasn't my understanding of what was being suggested.
I
Ange-
wouldn't use the, I mean, I'll use it however I use it, don't use the office part, I'll use it, I want to,
Yeah.
I have retail, I mean, I have dog washes, I've got,
Angela, how many dogs do you currently have on average?
like, the daycare and board.
Yeah, like, I mean, because if we're stuck on this 40 number, if that's, 40, 45, like, I don't think there's any issue, because we've known since day one, well, since this last meeting anyways, that you're gonna have offices in there, you're gonna have a dog wash, you're gonna have grooming, you're gonna have all that stuff. I think we keep coming back to the number of dogs, how many kennels, that piece, because that's been what's thrown around this whole time, where it's only 8, and now we're at 20, now we're at, so, in my mind, if it's like, okay, the next 2 months, we're only gonna be having average 20 dogs,
So,
I-
this
you
is
know.
Hannah, this is my daughter, she's in charge of the boarding and the daycare, she runs strictly that, so she's your number lady, I mean, she tell, we work together, but she'll be able to answer that question. She's the one that's booking everybody in and, so,
So it fluctuates, most people book at the very last minute. But, we've had as small as, 3 or 4 dogs boarding up to, 11, 12 dogs. I mean, it just.
we haven't had more than 12 dogs at one time.
No, and they come, it's not like they're all at once, they circulate. So like, someone might be checking out the day that they're checking in, so they just like pass each other.
So in the next 2 months, until, if we had to go through this April and then May thing, you could house all the dogs in the bigger building right now and have office only in the other building.
That's what we're doing right now, but we have a couple of litters that are coming that we're hoping to put into the nursery room.
Sure.
So if we had to, then we'll have to go to the daycare and boarding, and that's very stressful for a new mom. So, or the annex building. And we haven't actually addressed that yet either.
Chris, maybe a question. So, the original thinking was they would move into what I'm gonna call building number 1. That was the original intent, to have office, kennels, everything enclosed in that building. The building where they're currently located, we'll call building number 2, the garage building, is temporarily being used to house dogs because first building wasn't complete. So at the time of completion of first building, if they moved all operations into building 1, then they would be
I'm fine with that.
kind of following the original thinking of the CUP.
I think that's all that's true. The question just is whether or not they'd be using both buildings for the kenneling of dogs and things of that nature. But
Is
once
that
you're
a
on the first building
possibility?
done, that'd be something.
No.
Just because of the number, because of the number, the original building was supposed to house everything, but the daycare and the boarding, I mean, I didn't realize how much of a demand is. Every weekend, we have people reach out, and we've got repeat customers, now we got daycare that's taking off. There's no way we could fit, and we got a whole grooming room in that in the new building. So put everything into that, well, right now we're everything in one building, but it's very packed, and it's very noisy, and we have like, I know it would be possible, the other building's much smaller.
the original building was supposed to be a 40 by 100. When we submitted the prints and everything, they wanted to have engineering blueprints. In order to get that, we had to have several engineers do everything. Could not get that done for another 6 months with an extra $40,000. Mr. Murphy said if we drop the building sizes down to 2,400 square feet, we don't need all that extra stuff, we can move forward. So that's why where we came to the 2 buildings. So one building can't house her business. So that's why we approached you and asked if we can leave the garage that was supposed to be a garage and storage, make that kennels, have her office in another building with her grooming, and the dog wash for people coming and use it themselves privately, and her offices, and then the doggy daycare and so forth would be over here.
And I think that can all get addressed in the new conditional use permit. It should be
Correct.
addressed.
But I think right now,
Whether
I
it's
think we're
existing.
getting past everything.
Yeah.
I think what Mrs. DeMartini is asking is if she can have her office in the new building, just no dogs or anything at this time unless you'll allow the puppies in there.
When are they
at the
coming?
new work. If that can be in there, which is gonna
I think
We can't have puppies at our place.
right, I think the council's indicated they would be okay with that at this point.
Yeah, so you would have to have a certificate of occupancy from the building inspector for the first building to occupy that for your office.
And we'll make sure that's up here and filed with Jennifer as soon as it's.
And so then what he would be doing is looking at both buildings, you know, since if they're each under that 2,400 square foot threshold or whatever, but now he can consider them both one building in essence, if they're gonna have the same occupancy type, that raises you up over that threshold, but he can consider them one building perhaps.
I don't know, I'll ask him about that.
Yeah.
He was very kind what he did for us to explain it, how we should approach it, and I'll just.
Well, that was,
He
yeah,
already has an occupancy on the one building, that's already done. I'll ask him, you know, when I ask him about the HVAC system, if he feels
Okay.
it's adequate or not.
yeah, and I think fire separation between the two buildings, again, there's ways around that if you consider the buildings in essence one, even though they're two separate structures. But if they have the same occupancy type on the property, you can consider them one building, which then eliminates some of your fire protection issues if there's. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying it's how you look at it.
I was gonna say, do a little tunnel in the winter.
So, all right, so I think we're probably all kind of running down the same calendar here. So you need to get with Dan Murphy, get everything that he needs code review wise taken care of. Get any information then to staff so that staff can start to look at this and kind of formulate what the new conditional use permit would look like. Any conditions that the city may want to lay out. And then at our next meeting, April 4th, we kind of review everything and we'll set a public hearing. So that would then follow on the May meeting to go over the kind of the final bits and pieces of the conditional use permit. Did I say that all correctly?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to add anything to this, but, we have had a lot of customers asking about the dog wash. And now that we've talked about, we have to do the interim use, whatever. If Angela's allowed to move her office in there, are we allowed to allow people to go into the separate part of the building that's separate than this to wash their dogs, or she can't open it until you're all done with the conditional use? I just want to clarify that in case so that we didn't do it and then we upset anybody.
I think it's probably in our best interest to wait. You know, hopefully it's just that 1 month period of time, just so that there is no stickiness or.
I kinda feel like it's in the best interest to wait until at least the building is 100% done too,
Well, I
cause
meant
with
it
how,
was done in occupancy.
when's concrete going in though?
In the outside?
Like the pavement?
I have no
The
idea.
pad,
Yeah,
outside pad.
because I mean, just seeing that, I understand because I have a dog that's pure mud too, but I'm not sure I would want to go through mud and in mud to get in.
I was gonna build plywood
Okay.
sidewalks in the meantime. I can't touch it until the frost.
Right. I guess I just see your front lot and then thinking to get a dirty dog through the dirt and then a clean dog back through it into the car just seems.
They usually would go through the, retail part, because those are the
Oh,
doors,
got it.
so you don't have to do that much, but yes, you're right, I wouldn't wanna open with all that mud either.
She's on, it, trust me.
All right, anything else on this topic? Thank you. All right, next we've got Steve Moore with MetroNet here tonight with us. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Steve Moore, Project Director for MetroNet, and I'm here tonight in case you have any questions on our proposed utility easement for our fiber cabinet. The fiber cabinet, as explained prior months before, is to feed services here in Eagle Lake. Once the frost is out of the ground, we'll continue building the transport into town, and it'll go directly to this fiber cabinet, and then services from the fiber cabinet will be fed out through Eagle Lake.
Prior to the meeting tonight, I think Jennifer gave you guys a new easement that we just drafted, or I drafted with council.
The additional one here?
Metronet today, yep.
Okay.
So there's some concerns that the city had that we addressed on that. One was the idea whether or not this would be perpetual, which isn't necessarily uncommon for easements, but the council at a previous meeting had indicated that you wanted certain restrictions on that. So it will stay in place basically as long as Metronet continues to use it. Once they stop using it, if they stop using it, then would revert back to the city. And at that point, we would require that they take the information or bring it basically back to where it is now. And that's a little unusual for an easement language, but I know that the council had that concern, so we put that in there. The Metronet expects that this will continue forever, so hopefully it does, but we'll look at that. I had some concerns regarding how much additional space they may or may not need. I was told by legal counsel that they think that that's all they're gonna need, that with fiber optics, they can just drill it down in the hole. They don't necessarily have to go anything around it. So that's fine. And so I believe that this new version addressed all the concerns that the council had previously.
And has Metronet seen this language then as well,
And
or?
Metronet actually put that together. I spoke to the attorney on the phone a couple times today
Okay.
regarding the language he had about my concerns. I made some proposals for the language, but Metronet's counsel is the one who actually drafted that particular document. And you will see that in a drafting statement coming at the end, because
Okay.
they had the legal description and everything else, so. As much as I'd like to take credit for it, I can't.
Are there any questions from the council? So the additional packet there, you can see on the third page, under the red language, that's the easement then, if it's ever abandoned by the grantee, would revert back to the city.
Can you remind me, is there gonna be fencing around this and stuff? Cause I know it's right next to the sidewalk. Is there any issue with possible, one, just, it looks ugly and it's right there next to the road?
No fencing.
Okay,
No fencing, and we've done with previous cities, we can put landscape rock around it, so it's less maintenance, and it'll just look like it's, I mean, the cabinet is 5 feet tall.
and then was there talk at one point that there wouldn't be a cabinet? Cause of where we were putting something to make, or was there talk on that or not?
Yes,
Okay.
we
So we're
tried-
back to it now.
We're back to it
Okay.
because of things over in Mankato, so we're back to it so we can launch services, a little bit sooner.
Okay. And a little bit sooner being, what, cause I've had people ask too, they're like, well, we got it in our yard, but now what?
Yeah, so, we've probably got around 4,000 feet of construction left, and a majority of it's outside of town, bringing the transport in. We are making progress with the power company, getting our pole applications. We've paid Make Ready, which is a huge win. So now we're just waiting for the power company to complete their Make Ready, and then we should get our approved applications back. So hopefully we can start the aerial construction maybe the first part of May, along with the underground crews. And then it'll take time to splice, activate it, get the cabinet ready. So I'm thinking about the end of July, if not sooner, we're hoping sooner.
End of July installation or end of July customers can start signing up?
Customers can sign up now, and, you can sign up for services right now, and then once we activate it, then they'll be the first ones in line.
Okay.
Once you start cabinet, construction, how long does that take to get from start to finish?
Usually, probably a week and a half.
Okay.
Yep, it's pretty quick.
And the exterior of that cabinet is metal panel,
Yep, it'll be beige in color.
beige?
Yep.
And then I assume over the years, if there's any maintenance that needs to be done, painting wise and stuff like that, MetroNet would come out and take care of that
Yep, usually
per
on
the
these,
city's request and things.
usually on these cabinets, the paint usually lasts 15 years. It'll look good for a long time. And a prime example, if you get over to West Concord, there's one on the exact cabinet that we're placing in Legal Lake is at their well house in West Concord.
Well, what the council would be approving tonight is just an easement to allow them to put this on that property there or not. There's nothing that would allow them not to maintain this in the same fashion that would require other, things, similar things to be maintained. And you saw that probably most, definitely in the city of Mankato about 3 years ago when they painted a bunch of their utility things or let people kind of paint it because that was part of that
Right.
project. So you will have control over those type of issues. This is just allowing them to place it there.
All right, any other questions from the council?
I like the addition of if it's abandoned or reverts back to us, that you have to clean up the site and remove all the pieces. That's usually not added.
That's usually, but for easements, we usually don't have that type of language in there, but it is in this particular one, yeah.
All right, then I think do I have a resolution number? Or there's no resolution, it's just the approval of the easement?
I believe the resolution number is probably pending. I think it's coming up on your agenda a little bit later on here.
It'd be 2215,
Oh, I see it.
or 2216, I'm sorry.
All right, if there are no other questions from the council, I'd look for a motion to approve the right-of-way and easement to MetroNet for their cabinet, and that'll be Resolution 2022-16.
And make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And then I do need 2 copies, that way the city gets an original copy and then I get one to
Okay.
file at the courthouse.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet.
All right, and we have one last presentation tonight. We have Vern Simpson with us from the fire department, and a proposal for air packs for one of the trucks. Vern, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, hello everyone. As you know, we have had that 4311, our old number 1 pumper. We've had that on the listed for a while now to sell, and we really haven't even got any lookers yet, actually. The price is still listed currently. We just looked it up today. It's still listed at 40,000. And like I said, we still haven't got any lookers at all. I think that if we were to sell it probably in an auction or something, you'd probably get some kind of dollar amount like the last truck did, somewhere around $5,000. I think that the truck is better well served using it for a blocker and a spare truck, mutual aid. We still have, we would still have a truck here in town that way, it's beneficial to us that way, I think, as opposed to just selling it outright. So I rearranged the station a little bit to make sure we have room for the truck in there. All the trucks do fit. Of course, it is a little bit tight on the South Bay, but we're able to get them in and out without moving other trucks to get them in, so I think it can live there. And so in that case, in order to keep it NFPA compliant, I would like to put some packs on there. The way this all came about was we were contacted by South Central College. They're eliminating their fire school up there, and so they have packs that they've been using, which just coincidentally are the same packs that we have, that we just purchased brand new in 20 for our department. Those packs run approximately, with the bottles, right around $6,500 new, I think they are. And so we're looking at these to pick up 6 of them with 12 bottles. The difference in the bottles are 30-minute bottles, whereas the ones we have now are 45-minute bottles. They're a little bit smaller, but the clamp mechanism on the packs is fully adjustable, so that wouldn't be a problem at all. So looking at the cost of what we're looking at for them packs with them bottles is $9,000. So it's just a pretty good price to take advantage of if we can. So eventually there would be other stuff that we would want to put on that truck if we are going to keep it. I would think that the total bill would be somewhere close to 15,000 total if you counted this 9 for the packs. So that would be including, there would be a little more hose we'd have to put on there. There's a ladder that would have to go on there. And that would be things that we would look at picking up over the next 2 years. It's not anything that we're gonna have to buy today. So those are other things that could be budgeted for. Whereas these packs just popped up, so I didn't wanna miss the opportunity.
Where's fire school gonna be at now?
It's in Lake Crystal at the high school. That's this coming weekend, actually.
That's where it'll permanently be held, or?
I'm not sure where it'll bounce around. That was the place that SASCS is who's putting it on, and that's the only place that they found for more of a central location close to what they had before. There's a lot in the works for that yet.
And so the department has looked at this truck as one that has value to us to keep. I mean, once we looked at selling it because it had minimal value. Yeah, I guess that's my concern. It'd probably be better to get more use out of it here than, to get $5,000 for it or something like that. But, some of the things that the fire department has told us in the past is that it wasn't safe, it wasn't compliant, there were different needs that the truck had. Has that changed, or was that not correct?
We don't plan on utilizing it as a primary pumper. We plan to utilize it as, like I mentioned, as a blocker. And because it has a pump on there, the pump itself would have to be inspected annually. As far as all of the valves and everything that we had done on it, we don't have to have all that done in order to still keep with the compliance. So yes, there is some things that have to be kept up with, but not to the extent of what we were looking at previously to use it in this capacity. When you look at the availability of parts and the shortage that there is right now, take for instance one of the trucks we just went through state chiefs conference, and one of the chiefs up there, his truck just got smucked out on the highway 2 years before he gets another truck. So he's just out of a truck. Well, if we could stick this truck out there so it's the first one to get hit, you've got water on it, it's a nice solid wall, and we're not losing one of our good pieces of equipment. If we're out $5,000 because this one got hit, that's money well spent, if you ask me.
I just wanted to make sure you think that there's value in keeping it around, so.
Yes, I do think there's value in keeping it around, yes.
Any other questions from the council?
Dumb question, what's a blocker?
So when you're
The one
out
that
on the
gets
highway, so you don't get smucked. Yes, it's in the definition, it's in the dictionary. So, when you're out on the highway and you've got a lot of vehicles coming by, what we'll do is we'll park the truck, position it strategically, I guess you could say. So it's basically at a 45-degree angle. So any oncoming traffic, instead of hitting us while we're working on scene, will hit that vehicle and glance off instead of a solid impact.
And if we didn't have this truck, what would be the blocker? Something nicer?
Yes.
The new truck.
Yes.
I think that right there answers your question.
Okay.
And I did ask Chief Rushmeyer when I met with him both at the fire hall and out on the fire, and I said that. I said, you know, it was for sale for a long time. It looks great. What was the change? And he explained it more as like the first out truck had to be certified. Because I know we've always brought that up, like 20 years. That seems crazy, or 10 years, whatever it was. And he just kept calling it as the first truck out. So made sense to me when he went that way. Like if my house is on fire, I want to make sure that the truck that's coming to my house is actually certified to work how it's supposed to. So.
All right, well then we have an opportunity here to equip the truck with the packs. And so Vern would be looking for authorization to purchase those at $9,000. And we do have money allotted or set aside in our capital outlay for equipment, so this all seems to work out, so.
If I could add something real quick, that money that is allocated, part of that was for a side-by-side that we're not purchasing this year.
Okay.
So that, you know, frees up a little extra there as well, so, just for the record.
Very good. Now to look for a motion then to approve the purchase of the new air packs or used air packs.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Vern. We're going to juggle our agenda up here so we can get Chris off to his next meeting. We're going to jump to item number 4 under new business. The authorization to retain a third-party reviewer for the supplemental EAW for Mankato Motorsports. This is on page 141 of your packet.
And I'll put that up on the screen here as well. So I just want to put this on the agenda tonight to let you know that we received a supplemental environmental assessment worksheet from Bradford Development for the Mankato Motorsports Park project. The latest you had heard, the Court of Appeals had remanded, they had remanded 2 issues back to the city for further environmental review. I'm currently in the process of seeking proposals from consultants to complete a third-party review. For the first EAW, or the original EAW, we had a third-party review done and it was paid for by the developer. I did check with the EQB, Environmental Quality Board, I think I've said that right, and we cannot require the developer to pay for the third-party review, but we can try to negotiate with the developer or the project proposer to do that. So at this time, I guess I would just let the council know that I'm seeking proposals. I hope to have 2 proposals at least by the end of the week. I don't know how much that's going to be yet, and we should have some discussion as to whether or not the cost will be covered by the city, or if we want to try and negotiate with the project proposer. And I know we're kind of short on time, so you guys can see the rest of the background that's in the memo, but I'll turn it over to Chris and let him take it from here.
Yeah, I think Jennifer did a good job of kind of presenting where we're at this point. The previous council, I guess in this particular fashion, had indicated they wanted to go forward with the motorsports project. I think we do need a third-party review if we're going to go forward with it, but we probably need to kind of have an idea what those costs are not. There's been some preliminary contact with a developer. I mean, they're being a developer, you know, there's a little pushback about having an additional cost or not. But until we get those numbers, I don't know that it makes, you know, that anybody really has everything that they want to talk about or anything else but going forward. You know, with the Court of Appeals coming back on the 2 issues that they did, I think we just want to make sure that we're addressing everything that we possibly can. You know, quite frankly, the new environmental impact study takes care of a lot of it. We just want to make sure that we're crossing all our T's and dotting all our I's.
Right.
But, you know, it's hard to tell the council exactly what to do without having an idea what that cost is. You know, if the cost is less than, you know, $5,000, that's one thing. If they're saying also we want 20, that's something completely different.
Jennifer, do you recall what the cost was for the original third-party review?
Actually, I think I have it in my binder down here. I want to say it's 14,000. I'll take a look, but I'm pretty sure it was around that. 14, 20,000, I'll find out for sure.
I would anticipate this would be less than that, since it was just two items rather than the full.
I think it will be less than that. The only thing that concerns me is the Court of Appeals kind of expanded what they require in these type of matters.
Right.
When we're doing those kind of carbon emissions and how the affects the greenhouse. I don't know how that's gonna affect what they're coming up for quotes. 'Cause that's just not something that we've normally seen in these type of reviews.
14,300.
Okay.
And the developer project proposer covered the entire cost.
Yeah.
Any questions from the council? I mean, I think it's a wise thing to be looking at regardless of whether the city has to pay for it or if the developer pays for it. You know, this is all kind of stuff that's very technical, and getting, you know, somebody else to take a look, I think is what we want, so.
And not to put words in your mouth, Mr. Mayor, but what I'm understanding you saying is that you want staff to go forward with getting the proposals, finding what the cost, and contacting the developer regarding the payment of the cost.
Yep.
All right.
Mike?
Can I just say one thing quick? Just one quick thing. It's really easy.
Yes.
If you just move to an EIS, it costs the city nothing. Why cost the city $14,000 or 20? And to think that this is gonna be less because it's only two parts is kind of a ridiculous thought, because it was supposed to take 2 weeks to get this supplemental EAW back. It took 8 months. It is not a small supplement, and we need to take it into not just this piece, but this piece plus the other EAW that failed. That's
Well,
my thoughts on it. Let the developer pay for the thing.
Well, that's what we're talking about here is.
I mean, okay.
Yep, no, I appreciate it. I'm sorry for being rude to you, Daryl, I'm sorry. But again, there's gonna be plenty of opportunity for discussion on this topic. Yeah, we have to go through the entire process again, you know, so there's gonna be public comment periods. And so just now's not the night for our public hearing, so I apologize for being rude earlier.
Part of what I wanted to talk about there was actually in what I had to say about this portion, the picking of the person. I hope we're not going back to the same company just because they're the cheapest guy. This is for the future of the environment and the community. Cheapest guy is not always the best guy. You want the cheapest guy putting your brakes in your car?
Well,
Unfortunately.
we don't have any numbers, so.
Right, I'm just,
Right.
when you're,
But unfortunately, by statute, the council has to take the lowest priced, reasonable opportunity. So unless there's a real difference between the people who are making, or giving proposals on there, the council does have to go with the cheapest by statute. We can't pick somebody because we like them better, you know, if we don't have a specific reason for doing so.
can you look at their appeals versus wins versus losses, or how many times this thing's gone through and been fought?
No, not necessarily. I mean, because the problem you come is the same thing you have in this appeal here. I mean, the Court of Appeals basically said that the previous process by the council was 80% done correctly, but we're gonna add 2 things. You know, you never know what the Court of Appeals is necessarily gonna look at on that. And it, quite frankly, shouldn't be the job of the person who's coming in and doing that assessment for us to be worried about whether their appeals are correct or not. We just wanna know whether their information's correct. And then it's the council who's gonna make the decision based on that information. So when you're talking about wins and losses for appeals, it's really the decisions of the various, you know, governmental bodies are making those decisions, not the parties are giving them the information to support it.
So at this point, yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. I was just gonna ask about the timing of it. I do expect to get I contacted 3 consultants, and I expect to get pricing, because I talked to 2 of them for sure, but probably by the end of the week. I just wanted to throw that out there in case you wanted to look at a special meeting. Otherwise, we can wait till the next meeting as well. I just wanted to mention that.
well, I think as they come through, you know, I think we'll have to assess whether we have a special meeting then or not, but. Are we all comfortable moving forward, gathering up some pricing? and then this will come back to us. All right, then I would look for a motion to have city staff provide us with estimates from third-party reviewers, and also to make contact then with the developer again in regard to the costs.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. So this again will be, coming forward. Again, it has to be advertised in the EQB. You kind of know the process. And then there'll be the public comment periods. And I don't know if you've read through the response yet. Have you seen the new EAW? Okay.
No, is it filed on the city website?
No, not yet.
No.
Nope, just got it here. So
Where would we see it?
I sure can put that on the website,
Yeah.
absolutely. Just give me till tomorrow.
It's another big 120 pages or something like that, so.
Don't worry,
Better yet, I'll just email it to you guys
Nicole?
directly as well.
Can I take clarification, are you looking for like an environmental consultant, or what kind of consultant are you looking to hire?
So, last time, we used Houston Engineering, so we're looking at like Braun Intertech, Houston Engineering, consultants of that nature that have, experience doing environmental assessment worksheets, EIS, that kind of.
Environmental.
Yes, yep.
So, this process is beginning again here, so you'll see that coming forward. But again, we don't have enough information at this time to do anything with it, so we want to have our third-party reviewer kind of go through the process again. So this is what we did with Houston last time. I don't know if there's any particular timeline, I guess at this point, the rough estimates on when things happen.
Well, you're right, it's kind of hard until we have the third-party review completed, and then the council gets a chance to say it's complete, and then once you say it's complete, then we send it to the EQB, and then it goes out to anybody that's requested a copy and all the agencies that are listed, and then there's that 30-day comment period. So, and that's listed on that Minnesota rules that is in the packet, kind of explains that process, so. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure if I did a good job explaining that.
As far as, interested parties here, just so that you're not blindsided and things come up, the process is starting, so, I would imagine, it's gonna take us a month or so to get the third-party reviewer in, then they've gotta do their review, so, it's gonna be several months before, it really kinda comes back, I think, to us as a council, to act on those last two items, then that, goes off for public comments, so.
No decisions are made until the public comments.
Correct.
To be clear though, this would be a supplement, you're not only acting on those, it'd have to be as a total project that you're talking about.
As far as the EAW?
Yeah, you're talking about these two items.
I believe the court said just the supplement,
Okay.
just the two items.
The rest in mind, that was a death of 1,000 cuts, the court said.
So-
That was their word.
So then, the comments would be limited to those two topics. One was noise impact on wildlife, and the other was contribution to climate change or global warming.
One part of the previous one that was thought to be adequate was the traffic study. Well, just a month ago, they changed our traffic intersection because it's not adequate for what we have now. And the county came along and said, hey, you guys add more stuff over here, it's on the city to upgrade this intersection. So there's more cost in that too.
I'm gonna make note of that.
Bottom line, to be honest, you're hoping the timeline is such that you're out of office by then, so you don't have to.
Jennifer, is there this whole process is, as far as the court pieces is all new to me. So is there, from when the court came back to when we have to go back into court, is there a time frame in there or not?
Nope, so we don't have to go back an appeal was filed, went to the Court of Appeals, and then they reviewed, the challenge, if you will, or the appeal. And then they came back and they just remanded 2 issues, in only 2 issues, impacts of wildlife and climate change. Nothing else.
But it doesn't
was
say
an
like when
issue.
they came back with those 2 items, we don't have to go,
Nope.
bring it back to them within
Nope.
so many days or else it just goes away.
Nope, that's right. So the city now just has to make a determination on the impacts of wildlife and climate change and whether an EIS is necessary, or if the EAW satisfies the concerns with those from an environmental perspective.
Why wouldn't you want an EIS? Just cover your tails just dead on. I mean, it'll reveal everything that should be revealed.
Yeah, I've always been told that it typically isn't something that's done unless it's a much more impactful development.
Kip Rounder would tell you, if this county wants to go and put in a culvert, they gotta do an EIS.
I don't believe that.
This is what he says.
I don't think they've done any for that.
Seems like they said.
Now, did the Eagle Lake Fire Department treat you okay? I heard there was an incident. So, is everything okay? Like,
It's as good as it could be.
good, good. And we had a ladder truck that didn't make it to the right heights, or?
6 feet. Our ladder truck is only 63 feet, so, maybe that's a different conversation for a different.
No.
You know,
And they're gonna be your first donors of it too.
we were the first ones to get to use your ladder truck too, when you first got it. That's when the grain bin started on fire.
What are you doing out there? Well, I'm glad everything's good. We'll pass that along to the department, Vern.
I already can't remember your name, but he had a lot of expertise even in the area of the construction or dealing with this particular problem. you know,
Sure.
They've dealt with that kind of thing before.
Yeah, 20 years of millwright experience came in handy that day.
Good. Good. All right, well, then we'll move back to our old business. The spring cleanup, page 113 in your packet.
All right. So just a little recap. Discussion took place at the February 7th meeting regarding options available for a curbside cleanup through alternate haulers. We had gotten a notice from LJP notifying that they do not have enough staff to be able to accommodate a curbside cleanup this spring. City staff was able to reach out to a couple haulers, Waste Management and Hanson Sanitary. City staff was able to confirm that Waste Management would conduct a cleanup via centralized drop-off, which is the same as what LJP would do. But after multiple phone calls and getting transferred to different departments within Waste Management, was never able to get a definitive answer as to whether or not a curbside collection was even an option or how much it would cost. City staff also reached out to Hanson Sanitary out of Kasota. They do not do curbside collection for a spring cleanup, so I just noted in my memo just a couple options if the council wants to go ahead with the drop-off location or cancel the spring cleanup. I think those are our 2 options at this point, unless anybody has any other ideas.
Thoughts? Well, thank you for checking on others. You know, I'm disappointed that it can't be curbside. But I do think residents appreciate the service. And even if it's drop-off only, I think, in my opinion, we need to probably continue on with it. and perhaps there's some volunteer group that could pull a trailer around to help those that don't have the ability to do so, but I don't know that we've got much choice in the matter. Is that everyone else's thought, though, is to keep it going, and we'll just have to do a drop-off and hope that next year.
Well, it's either drop off or nothing, and I think we're
Right,
gonna get more
right.
frustration from people if we just eliminate it then,
Yeah,
and that's kind of the thing, like, do you want it or do you not? Cause this is the option.
Yeah, I think residents are still expecting it to happen, whether, what form it takes is, unfortunately not gonna be the one that most want.
so then Jennifer, do we have to give them some sort of a commitment then to the date? I think they have is May 14th.
Yes, they still have that on the calendar. And we'll get information out to the public, do a spring newsletter, and then, city Facebook page and city email.
All right, then I don't believe there's really any action that needs to take place other than just authorizing you to go ahead and get that
Okay, sounds good.
committed on our part. All right, new business, then we already took care of the Metronet right-of-way and easement. We took care of item number 2, the air packs for the fire truck, and so that jumps us to item number 3. This is resolution 2022-15. It's a resolution calling for a public hearing on the creation of the Municipal Development District number 3 and Tax Increment Financing District 3.2. So this begins on page 128 of the packet, and Jennifer, if you want to give some background here.
Will do. So as the mayor referenced, included in the packet is resolution number 2022-15, and basically the purpose of the resolution is just to call for a public hearing for 7 o'clock on Monday, April 4th. And I just want to clarify, because there was probably some confusion. I notified you we're going to have a special meeting on Tuesday. After talking to the consultant, he's able to do his 6 o'clock hearing at another city remotely. He's going to be in our front office and then be here in person for the 7 o'clock meeting. So he's a busy guy. So no special meeting. It's just going to be, the hearing will take place at 7 o'clock on April 4th. I also wanted to mention, because it does get a little confusing, this is a new process for many of you. If you've been paying attention to the other committee agendas, there was a notation on the Planning Commission meeting. So one of the requirements through the process is that the Planning Commission is asked to consider a resolution at their March 21st meeting, and basically they would just be making a finding that the TIF development district is consistent with the development goals of the city and plans for future growth. So they're not approving TIF. All they're doing by adopting that resolution is just saying that they believe that this development in this area is consistent with the land use and the development goals of the city. So in March here, that's the only action that would be required for the TIF process. Just really quickly to give you a refresher, Troy Schramm with Schramm Construction is looking at a 104-unit multifamily housing project in Eagle Lake on the Mike Foley parcel. He has an agreement with him to purchase that for housing development, and there would be 2 phases for the 104 units, and that would be, there's other areas in the development that would not be included under TIF. It would just be the 104 unit multi-housing family project, and then I'll get to that later. There's a site plan and building layout showing an illustration. So let's see, and then basically just with TIF, with the tax increment financing, there has to be a portion of the units that would be available to people of a specific income level if TIF were provided. So that would mean, based on what's being proposed here, that 20% of the units made available to families at 50% of the area median income, or 40% of the units made available to families at 60% of the area median income. So you could kind of look at it from an affordable housing standpoint, in that while the TIF is in effect, there's so many units that have to be made available to people that qualify within those income levels. So that's one thing with that I guess could be looked at positively. And then with TIF for housing, Minnesota statute does allow up to a 26-year term. Mr. Schramm has indicated that he is just asking for a 13-year term, and has expressed that but for the use of TIF, his project will not be possible. And so part of the process that Shan Sweeney will complete when he reviews the financials is to, verify that but for the use of TIF, that the project is not actually possible. So there's quite a process that has to be gone through, and Shan Sweeney is a professional consultant that deals with TIF and tax abatement. And then just a real quick, just real basic overview. TIF is a method of stimulating economic development. It uses additional property taxes that are paid on the new development, and then those increases above the original tax capacity are captured. So right now, there's taxes paid on those parcels, or on the parcel out there. So that money, that's the original tax capacity. So that the city would still continue to get, and then possibly even more before the TIF district has ended, if you go ahead with TIF. So basically, the purpose of the TIF project is to encourage the development, and then you have an increased tax base once that TIF district has ended, which benefits city, school, and county. And then I did also reach out to the cities of Belle Plaine, Jordan, and Northfield and talk to their community and economic development staff just to verify the terms of the TIF agreements he has with them, and then just to review the length of those terms as well. So I do have that information if anybody is curious. And then I also mentioned to Shannon that we've got some new members on the council, and this will be your first time going through TIF. So he has had a very busy meeting schedule, and he said he would be willing to come in and talk to you. I'm maybe wondering with his busy meeting schedule if there would be a need for a special workshop with Shannon, if we could maybe look at doing a noon meeting sometime. That might work better with his schedule. So I think that's an option if you wanted to look at doing a workshop before the public hearing, and then you can ask your questions to Shannon, and he's a really great resource, and he does a good job. But included in the packet is something in the meantime he sent me. It's just a handout with basic information about TIF. And then I also just wanted to let you know we do have a current TIF agreement with the Cedar Point Townhomes project, and that term is set to end February 1st, 2028. So I know it's a lot of information, but I just wanted to kind of give you a little background on some of that. And then, like I said, the resolution is just calling for that public hearing for April 4th at 7 o'clock.
All right, are there any questions from the council?
Jennifer, I have two quick questions. One related to the cost. Now, the cost per unit doesn't change. So if he says I want $1,500 per unit, that doesn't change based on what you make. It's just out of those units, 60% are going to be to a certain income. Not the price isn't going to change for that unit.
So he has to rent his units. Well, that's a good question.
Do you know what I mean? Does the rental price have to change?
So
or
I would
who qualifies to rent that unit?
That is a good question. I don't know 100% the answer to that. I'd have to check into that. I don't know if he has a flexibility to charge more in other units or not. I'm not sure about that, but I can sure check into that.
If I was to call Lloyd and say, hey, I want a unit, what's the cost? Is it just first it's this cost no matter what, then are you qualified? Or, based on what your income is? Second question is more clarification, because at the planning commission meeting, I thought he mentioned that not the whole project is TIF, right?
Yep, that's right.
Only a portion of it.
Just the 104 units, yep. So he's got other things like the slab on grade, different.
Like the association piece is
yes, not part of TIF. Okay. Yep, that's right. So I'll have to look into that question. I don't know how these how they manage their different prices that they charge, or if they charge the same price. I'm not sure. Okay. But all I know is that they do have to have a portion of it that is reserved for.
I didn't know if it was like a TIF rule though either, where you can charge the same. It's just 60% of the units have to be to this income group.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's set at whatever
the median income is.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. And so that can change, as.
So he can charge the same amount per rent no matter how much you make. It's just whether you qualify or not to get into that unit.
Right, but I believe he has to charge some at that
That
lower
pricing
rate,
level.
yeah. You know, and that's a percentage of them that would, and I guess I don't know how the business works, but if they lease it out at that. But yeah, then he could inflate everyone else's to take care of that or whatever,
Right.
you know, that looks like. So jumping on what Beth said here too, so Jennifer, in the packet, if you wanna go to the site plan. So he's got kind of two phases planned, the blue and the yellow.
So, just for my notes, and I've just been using it, so it's not, he didn't submit it looking like this, just. you know,
My
thinking
question
sloppy.
on this, you know, as we review, you know, whether this is something, you know, we want to do. So it looks like phase one is 7 fourplex units, potentially one on the south side of whatever that is, Thomas Extension or Blaze Extension.
Thomas.
I don't know if that's included. Can we get a site plan that shows exactly highlighted? Because my understanding is that TIF could be used for the construction of the infrastructure, the roadways and the utilities. And would that include everything? My biggest concern is I don't want to get to a point we say, yes, let's use TIF, but the rest of the development doesn't happen.
Yep, I get that.
That's my biggest concern, you know, because we've got single-family homes in this mix. We've got some of these patio homes and the association type of a piece. I'd like to know if that's kind of committed phase one, or if this is phase 17, you know, and we'll never see the end of the phases. I guess that's my biggest concern. I think, you know, it would be nice to see the number of single-family lots that they could have on this property. You know, just so we know what to expect as far as, you know, what that looks like.
So if you can see kind of on the bottom, it's really blurry, but he has a number of units, total for everything that's on this site plan. There's the 104 units of the 8 plexes, but that's only the TIF part. And then he's looking at, 26 twin homes in the single-family community, 16, and then is it 79 of the single?
Yeah, it looks like 79 single-family detached.
But yes, I will ask for a better.
And I don't know if they've got that laid out yet or not, or at least roughed out.
No, not all of it is, no.
You know, and I think we talked last time about that parkland and wetland and what,
Yep.
you know, a topographic layout of this would help too, because probably a lot of that is unusable, unbuildable. It's not even parkland. It's
Right.
more marshland and, but if I'm understanding this correctly, and he's going to move forward with the association components of this, those would be full property tax properties. I'm assuming they would be for sale units. And I know that's been something that I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, if only you had that kind of housing in town, I'd be all over it. And you've probably seen that, Anthony, in some of the sales going on. I mean, so that could be a super asset to the community. And so I'd like to see just a little bit more on the site, just so we can be
I know at the planning commission
comfortable
meeting,
with
they did ask him that. Cause remember we talked to him about it too with the road infrastructure and the issues we've had with some of these other other areas. So how does that, I mean, if we give them the TIF, they don't do the full road, they pull out of the rest of it, the city's just stuck with finishing the infrastructure? And they got the TIF?
Right, well, and they would own the property, and then it's ag land from,
You know what I mean?
the
Like,
first
so the
40
city has
acres.
a little at risk with that
Yeah.
or not?
Right,
But don't you guys look at the TIF is for the development area? I mean, he's telling you he wants to do the rest of this, but the TIF is only for the
For
areas
that
that are
piece.
highlighted. I mean, for, his costs with putting that infrastructure
Right.
in for that,
So my question would be, is that the Connie Lane extension, the Thomas extension, possibly that Maple Lane loop?
Part of it, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think if we can get a little bit more information
Sure.
on what would totally be included,
Absolutely, instead of imaginary line.
yeah. And then we could start to put some values to some of this as well, that, I was assuming that the TIF was for the entire 80 acres, and,
I did too until the planning commission meeting, and when he said that, I was like, whoa, wait, what?
Yep, the only thing is for the,
I mean, as you look at this, you can see, I mean, I've talked before, I think at the planning commission too, about my concerns that you've mentioned as well, Mayor, with making sure that the whole thing comes to fruition. I feel like that's where, later on in my administrator's report, I talk about some of these zoning, and this is one thing that I feel like we don't have any, current examples of anything like, I don't think there's ever been anything like this in Eagle Lake where we've got so many within a development. So I think as we get into this, it's very complex. And I think it may warrant some outside assistance as far as a consultant coming in and helping with, determining how we're gonna be handling the zoning within, or looking at these different parts of the development.
well, many years ago, when Eagle Heights was developed and that Maple Lane area was developed, there were some proposals for a PUD, a planned urban development or planned unit development, because it was getting to a point of whatever the proposal was, many more units per acre, so the density was going up, and we didn't have anything that really fit what that was, and maybe with a mix. We started down the process of the PUD, but I don't think we ever ended up there. I think then that developer pulled out and we never finished it, but that was probably, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, 10 years ago.
You're right. There is a PUD section in the code, and I did talk to the developer, and there's not interest in going the PUD route.
Okay.
But cause it gets very complex, but I still think I'm very concerned if we don't appropriately, just like you mentioned, Mayor, zone that, and these things don't come to fruition, you have to protect what the goal was intended to have different types of housing, not just all one type of housing.
All right, anything else question-wise, concerns?
Is he still hoping to break ground in the fall?
Well,
I mean, what's this type of, this seems like a very complex process
It
that we'll be
is.
going through.
Well, and so I was just talking to his engineer today, and they have to finish the wetland delineation, which they can't do until the growing season starts. Then they're gonna have to do environmental assessment worksheet for, because of the amount of housing units triggers that. So, and then there's plating, preliminary and final plating, and the rezoning. It's a lot of work. So I don't know the answer to that question.
And public hearing still,
Yeah.
and amongst all that. Just so I'm wrapping my head around all of this stuff coming up.
Yeah,
And supplies.
Yeah.
right. Oh, supplies are easy. So, yeah, it'd be 6 to 9 months just in the process here. So then it probably looks like it's a spring 2023 construction start. They might be able to do some of the infrastructure pieces if that all, rolls around and get your roads in and that thing, but. All right, so then the action in front of us would be Resolution 2022-15, and here would be calling for a public hearing on those two items, the creation of the Municipal Development District and then the Tax Increment Financing District. And do you think, Jennifer, if we move forward with that, they would have enough time to provide us with that additional information prior to the hearing?
I would think they should be able to, based on, I think they've got their, a good preliminary concept design included, but if they could just more clearly define exactly what the TIF dollars would be used for. And I can work with Shannon too and see if he can
Okay.
help me work with the developer to better kind of define that and, think we can get it done.
I think that's what I'd like to see is more of a, here's phase 1, here's phase 2 versus that imaginary line he always
Right.
points to, something that's more defined.
And maybe we'll never get that commitment level from him at this point, but,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, if they were to start on the townhomes as well as the multifamily and get a few single-family lots going, I think it could be a really neat little neighborhood.
I just think knowing that the TIF is just for that area, it makes it almost.
Feels a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well then, Jennifer, if we can get that information, before the council and the public will wanna see, kind of what this all looks like as we move forward. And then you're gonna look for a motion to, call for the public hearing, and that would be April 4th.
Yes, 7 o'clock.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. One last item of new business then on the list is mosquito control agreement with Clark Environmental. And this is on page 146 of your packet.
All right, just hard to believe we're gonna be dealing with mosquitoes here in a couple months, but, just received the agreement, from Clark Mosquito Control Company for the upcoming year, for this upcoming, mosquito season. And I just wanted to, just kind of quickly review, we had them last year do an extra mile of, parks and trails, with spray in addition to the 9, treatments. And sometimes that changed with weather, and they had to reschedule different treatments, but I believe we did get our 9 treatments. And that was $679.80. They're looking at, let's see, the one option consists of 9 biweekly treatments at $685 per treatment, and then the other one is 15 weekly treatments at $619.50. And I did call and confirm that the extra mile for the parks and trails is included with that $685 amount for the 9 treatments. I don't know if Brian has anything that you want to add to the conversation, but, okay.
It's just the same as the past
Okay.
years.
Okay. And we do have funds that are budgeted each year in the budget for this purpose, so there are funds available if the council wishes to move ahead.
Does it depend on the amount of rain we get over the summer, whether we need to add one or subtract one, or is it all, it's just
Yeah, and they
those
kind of
numbers?
work around that too for, like if it rains, then they're not gonna spray until.
Yeah, but what I'm asking though is, usually more water means more mosquitoes.
Right.
So if it's a heavy rain season, do we need more or less
We
treatment?
may, it depends.
Never have, okay, perfect.
But in theory, we could add one, potentially.
Absolutely, yep, you're right, because if it's a really rainy year, and depending on by the pond areas too, can maybe be worse for people in, certain parts of town, if you wanted to. Yeah. Yeah, last year, now you bring up a good point, we had a drought last year, so, we'll probably be in a drought again this year, but that probably did have some impact.
And are they able to work around the, music on Parkway like they did last year too then?
Yes, yep, we'll notify them of community events in advance, and then
Or
they try to
Tater
plan
Days and
around
things
it,
like that.
absolutely, yes. And anything at down at the park, any events,
Do they spray by phrase? Do they go down that small road
Do you
and
know,
spray
Brian?
that way?
Yeah, they usually go down, they'll go down,
That
path
dead
on
end?
the railroad tracks.
Oh, they go down the path?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know if they really go into if they drive on our grass, I don't know. I've never.
I didn't know they went down, I didn't know they went down the path though. I thought they just went to the dead end, the parking lot, and then went back up, but they go down the path. Okay.
Can I address the council on this one?
Yeah. You gave us some good feedback last year.
I know I'm not gonna win this battle, and I wanna make very clear at the start here that I'm speaking as a citizen who cares about the environment. and it has nothing to do with anything other than that. I'm speaking for myself. I want to make that very clear, because that's come back on me, even though I've never said here who I work for. So as a citizen, I think there are better options. I think that, I mean, maybe it's some spraying, but, you know, there are more effective options that are more target specific. You can drop into wetlands, so you have larvicides rather than adulticides. And you gotta keep in mind, you know, we had him speak last year. I don't remember who was from Clark, but they're a company trying to sell a product. And I do think these are not target specific. And I will do a photo journal of everything I find dead on my porch and under my bird feeders after spraying occurs this year. So I know I'm not gonna win this battle, but I think that if you can consider a combination, maybe a little bit of fogging, but maybe it's time to address, you know, the elephant in the room, which is we have a lot of wetlands around, and maybe something like a larvicide would be more effective. So that's all I wanna say.
And that's typically drop-in tablet into
I believe
water
so.
bodies?
I think that's what they do up in the cities.
Okay.
And I'm just worried about, you know, food web issues, you know, that I do see pollinators dead on my porch after the spraying occurs. And I know he said these are, I mean, I get it, dosage, it's a really small amount that's being sprayed, but the fact, and they do things like spray at night when only mosquitoes should be flying, but moths are out flying, you know, like,
Right.
there's a lot of other things that are targeted by these chemicals. And I think there are maybe some better options. I get it, it's buggy. I mean, no one wants to deal with mosquitoes, but I think maybe in the future seeking some other options, like a combination of larvicides versus adulticides or something like that might be something to consider. It might be cheaper too.
Well, I'd like you to keep the council posted with your photo journal too, because I'm interested to see, you know, what the impacts are. All I can do is sit outside and
Yeah, I mean.
I don't know if it works or not.
I live where my landlord, I mean, he's a great landlord, but he is not invested in landscaping. It's a mud pit next to our house. It's mosquito heaven, you know, but it's, I get it, mosquitoes aren't fun, but I do think that these chemicals are just kind of gross. Even if we're not worried about ourselves or our children, I think, you know, the food web issues are there, so. Nicole, I don't remember your last name. Oh, Davros, 101 Valley Lane.
Could I ask a question, Mayor? I think, does Mankato do the larvicide in their stormwater ponds? I don't think they do spraying. I think they drop tablets maybe in the ponds, I feel like, but, so, I mean, it's something definitely to consider. I just don't know, if we need to do a combination to get the areas that aren't around the ponds, like your neighborhood, Beth, you know, you don't have, well, you guys got ponds out there too. Never mind, I'm trying to think of places, but, I mean, we sure can look into other options in addition.
And I come from the Chicago area where West Nile virus, you know, is a big concern, you know, for humans as well as animals. And so it's always been, the tablets and the sewers and things like that. And, you know, get them where they're breeding as opposed to the ones that are flying, things like that.
And for me, having a kid who's allergic to them and been told to do DEET 40 max on your kid every time they walk outside, I'm like, more. But I do want to be sensitive to that. So if there are, and I know nothing about any of this besides the fact that, like, it's more for us, spray your kid so he doesn't have allergic reactions versus the opposite. So I mean, if there's a happy medium, I don't know anything about it to know.
Like, I mean, it might just be a little bit cheaper if you can do some sewer treatments or something like that, and then only a couple of spraying. You know, I know last year we were talking about going from, like, I don't know if it was 6 to 9 or 9 to however many, you know, and then they adjust it with the drop year, and it's not as bad, you know, save the city. They'll clean that up over time.
I think two things. One, I think we should really look, because I think it is more effective to do them larvicide, whatever. And two, is there anything timing-wise that for especially pollinators, you know, not do them during the month of May, because that's when they're repopulating or anything like that, some timings that we need to stay away from for pollinators? Because we all know, well, I think we all know if pollinators die, we all die, kind of thing, so.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's these great programs that, like, you can take advantage of funding to do landscaping in your yard. It's cost sharing, and I
dead pollinators on your porch. Okay.
Well, all right, well, we can look at some additional treatments and maybe see if Mankato does anything. I mean, the only drawback to the ponds that we have are if it rains hard, we turn that water over, don't we? I mean, basically, it's a part of our storm water system that we'd have to watch when we treat it, you know, or we could just be dropping it in and now you got 4-inch rain and whoosh, it's all gone, so. And I think we tried that with, did we put some barley straw down one time for some algae and then?
Well, like many years ago when we first started spraying for mosquitoes, we did it, we had the equipment, we did it ourselves. And then we did have the pumps to put in the deal, but back then you had to put so many in to treat anything that it wasn't cost effective that way.
Okay.
So then we went to the spraying it with our own equipment back then.
Well, maybe between Brian and I, you could help me. We could get a hold of this gentleman. I don't know if he would have the tablets. Would it be a different company, do you think?
I don't know if they do it yet.
Well, maybe you and I, between the two of us, we can try to bring something back for the next meeting, if that.
Or even for, I mean, I realize your workload's like, even for next year, you know, like, maybe this year's a done deal, but in the future, or something like that. Just, I appreciate your workload, you know.
Well, I mean, I agree. If we're gonna spray and it's not, we're spraying in the middle of town when it's not effective, but I mean, I know individual homeowners, well, you're right by it too. Well, none of us can answer. Carrie, how's yours?
I have one right across the street.
Yeah, so we all do. There's so many of them, but like in town, our daycare, she's right in the middle of town, not near one, and she has her backyard sprayed because the mosquitoes are so bad in town. So like, kind of figuring that out of like when you're not by water, what to do. Because I know there's a lot of daycares that the normal spraying, she's like, we need more because they can't even go outside to do, you know, in the afternoon.
Right. All right. Well, we've got some, you know, kind of additional work to do. What we have in front of us here, if we want to do some spraying here, we've got two options, the 9 bi-weekly treatments or more weekly treatments. And I think last year we did the bi-weekly.
Yes.
That's what we've always done.
So if we want to continue the program, I'd look for a motion to move forward most likely then with the 9 bi-weekly treatments, and then we can see about supplementing or modifying our approach if we find some additional means to do so. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
9 or 15?
9.
All right, we have a motion for continuing with Clark for 9 bi-weekly treatments. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Yeah, and then if Jennifer and Brian, if you find some additional information, will you bring that forward to the council and?
We'll just plan for the next meeting to try to bring some information back.
All right. That was the last of our new business. We've got a few just kind of miscellaneous items here. The open book meeting notice. I think that's page 150 of your packet.
Yes, and that is Monday through Friday, of April 18th through the 22nd. And it's 9 o'clock. If anybody's interested in challenging their valuation, they should report to the assessor's office, and they can discuss those numbers with them. And this was published in the newspaper, posted at City Hall, and so hopefully that reaches everybody that needs it.
All right. Summary of performance evaluation.
And this is just per the requirement with statute that if there's a performance evaluation of any employee held in closed session, that just at the next open meeting, we have a summary of conclusions. So I just summarized that here just for transparency purposes and to comply with the open meeting law. So I don't know if I need to go through that, but I just summarized what was discussed at the closed session.
Did anyone see anything that wasn't as we discussed?
Oh yeah, I guess I should ask you that. I thought I typed something differently. Darn, I should snuck something.
All right, well, no formal action is needed. We'll move on then. The last item is Blue Earth County Fair sponsorship. This is a new one.
I know, this came in the mail and, you know, I didn't want to not pass it along to you for consideration. I don't know if many of you go to the fair. I know I went last year, took my kids, and they're just, you know, I did see some other, I think like Garden City, because it's held, you know, technically in Garden City as a sponsor, but I don't know if that's something the city, you know, we haven't specifically budgeted any monies for it. I think the fair has a lot of really good things, but I don't know if it's something we can do this year. Perhaps next year we look at putting some money in the budget if that's something you're even interested in, so.
Yeah, I don't even know if we have very many citizens that participate in the fair. I mean, you know, a lot of it is, you know, agricultural things, and so typically wouldn't come out of the city. I don't know if last time anyone's been to the Blue Earth County Fair? Never?
I know, I went last summer with my kids, we did all sorts of baking, you know, they did want to do some different things, so. I mean, it is good to have, and I know that we had some local Eagle Lake people that were vendors there at their crafts.
Sure, I
Area.
will at some point.
Is it a normal public expenditure to sponsor?
I suppose it's,
county
you know,
fair?
to
I don't-
promote, yeah, I don't know. I've never worked in a city where we've supported, county fair before, but anyways. I just didn't wanna make the decision without at least running it by the council.
I guess my opinion is no. Okay. All right, well then we'll pass, Jennifer, so.
Okay.
City Administrator's report.
All right, so, as you notice, we don't have our new microphones yet. They're just exactly what you guys had suspected at the last meeting. We're waiting on, one part. It's an expander for the DSP. And the last time I checked, it was about 14 to 16 weeks, on back order. So once it comes in, they're gonna get in here and get them installed, and, VSI left it with me. They would give me updates, but other than that, I guess the only other option right now is just for all of us to talk right into our microphones. And hopefully that'll help in the time being. Real quickly, Music on Parkway. This will be the second series. We had 5,000 allocated in the budget. The American Legion post-617 gambling fund was very generous and made a donation to the city in the amount of 5,000 to help complement the monies that we have so we can have a nice series this year. So the planning committee is going to be meeting next week, and that's Mayor Oranger, Garrett Steinberg, JD Pals, and Perry Madden, and myself. And then we'll hopefully be able to get a schedule or some information put into the spring newsletter, because I know I myself got a lot of positive feedback from people in the community that really enjoyed it. And wanted to see it happen again, so that was a good thing. And then real quick, Ann Wolf with Minnesota MnDOT was planning to attend tonight's meeting. A couple months back we had talked. They're a little bit behind schedule, and she said she will keep me posted, but they're not ready to make it to a meeting yet, so just stay tuned. I'll let you know as soon as I hear back from her. And then recap of recent Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Legislative Action Day. And recent communication with our legislators about water improvements needed in Eagle Lake. I just wanted to let you know, we did have a Zoom call with local legislators. They're very supportive of Eagle Lakes project. There's a lot of money that's potentially available. So they will put in a plug for Eagle Lakes project. We're just waiting on some updated numbers from the engineer, so they can get that and help try to promote it as best as possible. And then I attended the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, like I said, Legislative Action Day. And the top policies, of course, are local government aid, which is really important. And I do have some more information I'll have to get to you another time, but I think it'd be a good educational opportunity to learn more about LGA. They're looking at doing some changes to the formula to increase the aid, especially with all this additional funding that's available. So under different scenarios, Eagle Lake could potentially get some more funding. So that's important. We're gonna really keep a close eye on that. And then obviously economic development programs, childcare, housing, those are some of the real big ticket, and environmental issues with, clean water, which directly impacts Eagle Lake with our project. So, and then the other thing, I just want to give you an update, just so you know that it hasn't been forgotten, the utility extension project for the Reagan properties. We did have a meeting with the owners of 800 Parkway Avenue, and they're agreeable to a utility easement. And we also notified the two properties to the west of 804. One of them responded that they're interested in sitting down and learning more about what would be involved with annexation and having utilities extended. And so we have a meeting set up here, and I'll keep you posted on that. Status of Agency Street lighting. Xcel Energy notified us that a new light was installed on the north end of the project, but the mast arms, big surprise, are on back order until mid-June. So we'll have to wait on that in case, I just want to keep you posted in case we get any questions about how come
It's
that's not
dark
done.
out there.
Yeah, yep. And then the next item, upcoming free Emerald Ash Borer Outdoor Field Workshop. There's gonna be a free workshop held in St. Clair. Brian's gonna be sending two of his staff, and then I'm gonna attend a different session. And these are of no charge, but they're, I think, gonna be really helpful for us to get a little more information. And then with EAB, our community forestry member will be at the May meeting to talk to you about our EAB management plan and getting that adopted. And then we got a grant through the DNR to remove 7 trees and replace them. And so Brian and I are kind of working on getting pricing, and we'll get all that to you before we actually have any trees removed and replaced. So, and then planning zoning related work, I just wanted to make a note on there. A while back had contacted South Central Service Cooperative just to find out what it would cost if there's ever a time where you kind of feel like you're getting just clobbered with planning and zoning things, and I kind of feel like we're getting to that point right now. And then as I mentioned with the Troy Schramm development, I think it's very complicated. So we do have an agreement with Minnesota Valley Council of Governments, and they do assist us with just real general planning and zoning, and they do a great job. And so I've talked to the program director, and I let her know kind of our needs right now, and that there's a lot. And in my position, I wear a number of different hats, and so sometimes it's hard to devote the time needed to some of these issues when you've got other demands. And they're doing a great job of helping when I have questions. And we kind of talked about if there's ever things that come outside the scope of that agreement, that she will let me know. And then that's where I feel like if we get to that point, that's where maybe we need to look at hiring not bringing on a consultant for, a part-time or that kind of basis, just on an as needed, like a couple hours here and there for certain projects, just to get that extra. I think in the long run, it's money well spent to make sure that we have everything set up properly for the community. So just wanted to, let you know my concerns with the workload on some of that when we've got a lot going on, and hopefully get your support and be able to contract out, on an as-need basis. So.
Okay.
And I think that's all I've got.
2 questions for you on that, Jennifer. The Maple pedestrian connectivity study, do we have a timeline on when that was supposed to start? I think we talked about it last month.
Yes. So that is going to be completed this summer. I think by around June, that's supposed to be completed. I can get, more updated information on that.
Is there anything that we need to do, or?
No, nope.
Okay.
I was on the selection committee for the consultant, and we selected Bolton and Mink. And so they're gonna be working on all the work items, and I believe it's June that's supposed to be completed, but I'll
Okay.
double check for sure.
And then we also had the strategic planning
Yes.
grant through Smith, is that?
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, so we've got that underway with the Economic Development Authority, and so we're just kind of kicking off that process. There's going to be a public engagement component, and so I'm going to include some information in the spring newsletter, letting people know that, keep an eye out, there'll be a survey of some sort coming.
All right. Do we have any council member reports? No one's got anything? I had two items I wanted to bring up. Obviously, you're all seeing it. Inflation is going crazy. And so I'm just wanted to get the council's opinion, as far as the budget that we have set. I don't know if there's ways that we can ask staff to control costs, maybe look at a target of reducing spending, across each department. And I would, it'd be more of those supply issue things. Can we do some different things with supplies, to minimize costs? And we're gonna have difficulty getting things, for one. So I wanted council's thoughts on looking forward, how do we try to be cognizant of inflation and the costs that the city's going to incur? Are there thoughts that maybe any of you have to, minimize? You look at gas prices. The fire department can't not respond to fires. The police department can't not respond to calls. So I don't know how we can reduce fuel consumption, amongst departments. So I was just thinking of any other areas and maybe give that some thought. And we don't have to do anything with it right now, but I think inflation is only going to get worse. I don't like to be a negative Nelly, but we're not going in the right direction. And I just see everything is starting to ramp up, so.
Or the only other thing that I can think of, is there any other purchases that we have later in the year that we should pull up? Because we think they're gonna be higher in September than now.
Good point.
That's the only thing I've,
Maybe that'd be good to throw to department heads, is to think about future purchases.
that were budgeted already for this year. If we think
Right.
it's gonna, well, I think we all know it's gonna.
Price and supply,
Yeah.
We're gonna, like the park benches.
If you
We're gonna have
can
issues
if you
where
can
it's
get a
gonna be.
picnic table,
Right. So I think it's kind of a two-part question
Right.
there, or, thing,
Well, yeah, we might wanna try to purchase them, but they're still not
Yeah, we
available.
still can't get 'em.
Still can't get 'em.
So I just wanted to bring that up. I think that's something that we need to probably think about. And the next item kind of ties into that, and that's the cost of living adjustment numbers. So again, as we budget for employee salary increases, next year's cost of living adjustment is gonna be outrageous. Not that you guys, not that I don't wanna give you a 15% increase, but as a council, I think we need to look at how we do that and maybe look at, what is an appropriate, level of salary increase and things like that. 'Cause that one I worry that can come and bite us pretty quickly. So be thinking about that. Maybe Jennifer, we can look at, some ways around that, but.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted you all to kind of be thinking of, all right, what does 6 months look like from here? Let me put that at the forefront. If any of you all have ideas on what we can do, maybe we start to put our heads together on that, so. All right? Anything else? Then I will look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.